Have you ever stopped and wondered how a company, a brand that was basically a weekend ritual for millions of us, can just disappear? It feels like it happened overnight. Well, today, we're going to figure it out. We're doing an autopsy on an absolute icon, the rise and the spectacular fall of Blockbuster. To really get how big this was, think about this number. At its absolute peak, back in 2004, Blockbuster had 9,000 stores all over the globe. It wasn't just a video store, it was a cultural empire, the undisputed king of Friday night. And today, from 9,000 down to 1. Just a single store is left. And honestly, it's less of a store and more of a tourist attraction in Bend, Oregon. It's basically a living museum. The scale of that collapse is just staggering. So that's the big question, right? How does a titan like that just die? Now, the easy answer everyone throws around is Netflix. But the real story? Oh, it is so much more complicated and frankly, a lot more interesting than that. So here's our game plan for this deep dive. We'll start with a quick overview, then look at why its business model was maybe broken from the start. We'll relive a faithful meeting, analyze all the competition, uncover the drama at the top, and finally, see what we can learn from this whole mess. All right, let's kick things off with a bird's-eye view of Blockbuster's life. It'll give you a sense of just how quickly this giant turned into a ghost. Okay, so it all starts in 1985 in Dallas. By the year 2000, they're on top of the world, and they have a meeting that could have changed history. Just 4 years later, they hit that peak of 9,000 stores. And then, bam, only 6 years after that, they're filing for bankruptcy. A meteoric rise and an absolutely catastrophic fall. But here's the thing. The cracks in Blockbuster's foundation were there long before anyone was binge-watching anything online. You could almost say the company was, in some ways, built to fail. This quote from a big-time Hollywood executive just nails it. He's basically saying that Blockbuster's biggest enemy wasn't some new tech company, it was itself. It was its own arrogance, its own broken business model. They got so big they became blind. And this right here, this chart shows the core of the problem. In the year 2000, a massive 16% of Blockbuster's revenue came from late fees. That was about $800 million. Their business literally depended on annoying their own customers. Some people even called it managed dissatisfaction. You made money by making people unhappy. That is not a good long-term plan. And you can see exactly what happened. The moment more customer-friendly options popped up, that stream of cash just dried up. It went from $800 million to just over $130 million in less than 10 years. This wasn't just about losing money. It was proof that customers were totally fed up. Okay, this takes us to what might be the most infamous moment in Blockbuster's entire story. The year is 2000. And the founders of a tiny, struggling startup called Netflix walk into Blockbuster's massive headquarters for a meeting. You have to understand the power dynamic here. It was a total David and Goliath situation. Blockbuster was the Goliath, swimming in cash from a recent IPO. And Netflix, they were David, bleeding money in the dot-com crash and basically begging for a lifeline. So, here's the pitch Netflix brought to the table. It was brilliant, really. Netflix would build and run Blockbuster's entire online business. In return, Blockbuster would promote them in their thousands of stores. And for this whole opportunity to basically own the future of entertainment, they were asking for just $50 million. And Blockbuster's response? Well, according to the Netflix co-founder, their CEO, John Antioco, didn't just say no. He was actively trying not to laugh in their faces. They didn't see an opportunity, they saw a joke. It's maybe the most perfect example of a huge, successful company completely underestimating the little guy. That arrogance wasn't just aimed at Netflix, though. Blockbuster completely failed to see that they weren't just fighting one enemy. They were being attacked from all sides by a bunch of different competitors, and each one was taking a small piece of their kingdom. See, this wasn't one big battle. It was a war on multiple fronts. You had Netflix attacking them on convenience and getting rid of late fees. Then Redbox came along and attacked them on price with those $1-a-night kiosks. Blockbuster was this big, slow giant, and all these smaller, faster companies were just poking at all of its weaknesses at the exact same time. So the threats from the outside were bad enough, but what really sealed Blockbuster's fate, the fatal blow, actually came from inside the company. There was a civil war brewing in the boardroom.
And here's the crazy part. The same CEO who laughed at Netflix, John Antiaco, he eventually saw the light. By 2004, he finally recognized the threat. So he launched this bold new strategy: get rid of the late fees everyone hated and pour a ton of money into Blockbuster Online to go head-to-head with Netflix. It was a huge risk, giving up short-term profit for a chance at long-term survival. But the board of directors, they panicked. Getting rid of late fees meant losing hundreds of millions of dollars right away. The new online plan was going to cost a fortune. They just couldn't handle the idea of losing money now for a potential gain later. So they fired Antiaco, and then they reversed all of his changes. They basically hit the undo button on the one single strategy that might have actually saved them. So what do we learn from this massive corporate train wreck? What are the real lessons we can take away from the fall of Blockbuster? When you look at all the evidence, it's pretty clear. It wasn't just Netflix. It was a perfect storm of failure. They had a business model that customers actively hated. Their leadership was so blinded by success, they couldn't see the future. They couldn't fight a war on multiple fronts. And, maybe worst of all, their own internal politics killed any real chance they had to innovate. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. Think about today. We have dozens of streaming services. Finding the movie you want to watch is getting scattered. It's getting more expensive, and honestly, it's getting less convenient. So you have to wonder, are we seeing the exact same kind of customer frustration that opened the door for Blockbuster to die? Is history, in a way, about to repeat itself?